The morning light cut through the glass walls like cold silver, washing the marble floors in a sterile glow. Phones buzzed. Yeah. Shoes clicked. Men in tailored suits barked orders into headsets as if the world depended on their urgency. It was the kind of lobby where everything felt expensive. Even the silence. And then the silence broke. A small figure stepped through the revolving doors. Bare feet, dust-stained jeans. A shirt the color of forgotten storms. Her hair tangled like it had fought the wind and lost, hands trembling around a single crumpled paper. The security guards didn't move at first. They only squinted. People slowed their steps. A few eyebrows lifted. Someone whispered, "What is that kid doing here?" But she didn't look at them. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She walked forward. Straight toward the gleaming counter where the suits gathered like predators around a kill. A man in a navy suit stopped mid-laugh. Another gasped softly, offended by her presence as if she had broken some invisible law. But one man, the loudest one, the one seated with a polished watch and a face carved in arrogance, laughed so loudly his voice bounced off the marble pillars. He pointed at her as if she were a joke. No one stopped him. No one helped her. No one even wondered why a child would dare step into a building filled with people who never knew hunger, fear, or cold. The girl held her paper tighter. Her lips trembled. But her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady. I just want to see my balance." A few people chuckled. Someone coughed to hide a smirk. The millionaire in the seat leaned forward, grinning like a man who believed the universe existed purely for his amusement. "Your balance?" He laughed again louder, as in a bank balance. More laughter exploded around him. The girl didn't react. Not to the laughter, not to the stares, not to the cruel way adults reduce a child to nothing. She simply lifted the paper toward the clerk. And in that moment, in that fragile, breathless second, the entire lobby leaned in. Because whatever was on that paper was about to change everything. The clerk blinked twice, confused, then hesitant, and quietly afraid to even touch the paper the girl was holding out. His hand hovered in the air, trembling with the same. Uncertainty spreading across the lobby like a slow, cold draft. This was a place where adults came to move millions, where assistants sprinted to fix the mistakes of powerful men, where bankers argued about mergers, tax havens, overseas transfers, where success had a dress code. And yet, here she stood, a child who didn't even have shoes, asking to see her balance. The millionaire leaned back in his chair, lazy grin spreading across his face like spilled oil. "Go on, kid," he mocked. "Maybe it's your balance. Maybe it's enough to buy a sandwich." His friends snickered, one of them whispering, maybe she wandered away from a shelter. But the girl didn't lower her arm, didn't look away, didn't cry. She waited, with a patience that didn't belong to a child. Finally, the clerk, flushed with embarrassment, took the paper between two fingers, the way someone picks up something fragile, or something they don't want to touch. The paper crinkled softly. One man behind the desk scoffed. "Why are we wasting time? Just call security." Another waved his hand dismissively. "She's probably confused. Get her out before clients see this." But the clerk didn't move. His eyes slowly, deliberately traced the first line of the paper, then the second, and by the third, his breath caught. He straightened without meaning to, his skin drained of color. His eyes widened, not in irritation, but in something close to shock. The millionaire rolled his eyes. "Oh, please," he laughed. "Don't tell me you're taking this seriously. Probably a drawing." Or a. The clerk didn't respond. He simply swallowed hard, glancing at the girl, then back at the paper, as if the world he knew had tilted slightly off its axis. Because whatever he saw, whatever was printed on that worn, dirty sheet didn't belong to a child from the streets, and for the first time that morning, the laughter began to fade. A murmur rippled through the suits, a subtle shift, barely audible, like wind brushing past glass. But in a lobby built on certainty and control, even a whisper of confusion felt like an earthquake. The clerk's fingers tightened around the paper, lips parted, as if he wanted to speak, but no words came out. Behind him, a woman in a gray skirt stopped typing. A junior banker leaned forward. A manager paused mid-stride, tablet pressed against his chest. All of them watching the same thing. A child, covered in dust. Holding a paper that suddenly no one found funny anymore. The millionaire scoffed dramatically. "Oh, come on," he said, pushing his chair back with a loud scrape. "She probably scribbled a fairy tale on there. Let me see it." But the clerk instinctively stepped back. Not protectively, not aggressively. Just respectfully. A reaction. So gentle, so out of place in this building of blunt ambition, that it made the millionaire freeze for half a second. "What?" the businessman snapped. "You think she's actually important?" No one answered. The girl remained silent, her small hands clasped in front of her, breathing slow, controlled. In a way no child should ever have to learn, a security. Guard approached from the side, shoes tapping firmly against the stone. "Is this causing a disturbance?" he asked the clerk, eyes flicking between the girl and the paper. "You want me to escort her out?" The clerk hesitated, a long, trembling hesitation that hung in the air like a held breath. I'm not sure yet," he finally whispered. His voice cracked slightly. A second guard joined, crossing his arms. "Well, she doesn't belong here. Nobody like this walks into a private banking lobby." The girl swallowed. Her eyes not pleading, not fearful, just tired shifted. Toward the clerk. "Can you please check it?" she asked softly. Something in her voice thin, fragile, but steady like the last light before dusk, cut straight through the noise, through the arrogance, through the marble walls. The clerk nodded, almost involuntarily. I'll check," he said. And that single sentence was the first fracture in the millionaire's certainty. The clerk's footsteps echoed softly as he moved toward, the terminal each step careful, deliberate, as if the floor itself had turned fragile. He smoothed the crumpled paper, hands trembling slightly, and slid it under the scanner. The machine beeped, soft, ordinary sound. But in that tense lobby it felt thunderous. The screen woke up. White light, a loading bar, a spinning icon. Silence thick enough to choke on. Behind the desk, a row of executives leaned in. Not because they cared, but because curiosity is a powerful poison. And arrogance always assumes superiority. The millionaire chuckled under his breath, tapping his pen against the counter. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "We're all gathered here for what some homeless kid's imagination?" His friends smirked, one whispering loudly enough to be heard. "She probably found that paper in the trash," another joked. "Maybe she thinks this is a charity bank." Laughter, small, sharp, mocking cut through the air like shards of glass. But the girl didn't flinch, didn't look left or right, didn't back away. Her eyes were locked on the screen. Not with excitement, not with fear, just a quiet, exhausted hope. The kind of hope that's too heavy for a child to carry. The loading icon spun again. The clerk inhaled slowly. He wasn't laughing anymore. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't irritated. He was easy. Something about the paper, the number handwritten. At the corner, the official seal barely visible under dirt. Something wasn't aligning with the story everyone assumed. A manager stepped closer, frowning. "What's taking so long? Just clear her out?" But the clerk ignored him. A faint ding sounded, the kind the system only made when a file required. "Additional authorization." The millionaire rolled his eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. Now we need security clearance to open this kid's fairy tale? Still?" The clerk didn't laugh. His hand hovered over the mouse, hesitating again. And then the screen flashed. A new window opened. The clerk's pupils dilated. His throat bobbed, his breath stilled. Whatever he was seeing wasn't funny, wasn't ordinary, and definitely wasn't what anyone in that marble lobby expected from a barefoot little girl. Holding a crumpled sheet of paper, the room suddenly felt colder. Something was wrong. Terribly, possibly wrong. The clerk's eyes stayed glued to the screen, blinking wide, as if the system had just shown him something that didn't make sense in the world he knew. His fingers twitched once, twice, then froze entirely on the mouse. A nervous breath escaped him. Are you okay?" One of the junior bankers whispered, but he didn't answer. He sees behind him a woman in a charcoal blazer leaned closer, tapping her fingernail against the counter in growing irritation. What is it? A glitch. Just close it out and move on. The clerk didn't move. Another man sighed loudly. This is wasting our time. The kids from the street wander in all the... He stopped because the clerk, pale as paper, slowly shook his head. Not a big shake. Not dramatic. Just a very small, terrified motion, like someone trying to deny a nightmare. The millionaire laughed again, louder this time, trying to regain control of the room. Oh, for heaven's sake, he barked. What? Did it say she has $10 instead of $1? Just tell her to go away. Still, no reaction. The lobby grew quieter. Not silent, just unsettled. The second security guard stepped forward, irritation twisting his face. Sir, is this a problem? Should we remove the girl? The clerk swallowed. Hard. Loud enough for the nearest people to hear. Don't, he said softly. The guard blinked. Don't? The clerk shook his head again. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Just, don't touch her. That single sentence, that quiet. Wavering warning from a man who had mocked hundreds of customers over the years, hit the room like a thrown stone. The girl's grip tightened around her dirty shirt. But she didn't step back. Didn't run. Didn't cry. She just stood there, small, still, waiting. Waiting like someone who'd spent her entire life being told to move. And for the first time was being told she didn't have to. The millionaire scoffed. But something in his grin cracked. What did you see on that screen? He demanded. His voice wasn't mocking anymore. Not confident. Not amused, it held something else now. A hint of fear. A sliver of doubt. The first seed of panic. The clerk's lips parted. He exhaled a shaking breath, but said nothing. Not yet. The air in the lobby thickened, not with noise, not with movement, but with fear. A quiet, creeping kind that slips under clothes and settles. Against skin, the clerk stepped back from the monitor as if it were hot metal. His chair rolled a few inches behind him, wheels squeaking across the polished marble. He wiped his palms on his shirt once, twice, but the sweat kept forming. What's wrong with you? The millionaire demanded, leaning forward, voice cracking through the tension like a whip. It's a child. A child with dirty shoes and no address. What on earth could that screen possibly stop talking? The clerk whispered it wasn't a command. It wasn't rude. It wasn't even loud, but it silenced the room. The millionaire blinked. Excuse me? The clerk shook his head slowly, eyes still locked on nothing, as though he were staring past the lobby, past the walls, past the safety of everything he thought he understood. A woman at the back cleared her throat nervously. What? What did it show? A frozen account? Some kind of fraud? The junior banker beside her whispered, or maybe the account belongs to someone dangerous. The girl shifted her weight, the floor cold beneath her bare feet. Her small hands curled into fist knot in anger. But in the instinctive way, children brace themselves. When they expect to be yelled at, the clerk breathed in sharply. Then he said something that made the room tilt very softly. Barely audible. Like a confession he never wanted to speak, it asked. For biometric confirmation, a ripple went through the executives. Brows furrowed. Someone muttered, That's impossible. Another shook his head. No child has that level of access. The millionaire scoffed, but his laugh rang hollow. Biometric. For what? A free lunch account? No one laughed with him, because biometric access wasn't for ordinary accounts. It wasn't for high-net clients. It wasn't even for the wealthy. It was reserved for the clerk shut his eyes, steadying his breath. I've never seen that prompt before, he admitted, voice weighed down by something close to dread, and it won't let me bypass it. The girl finally lifted her head. Can I? Put my hand, she asked quietly, and for the first time, no one tried to stop her. A hush swept over the lobby, not a comfortable silence, but one sharpened by disbelief. Executives who normally negotiated billion-dollar deals now stood frozen, staring at a barefoot little girl approaching. A biometric scanner, as if she were stepping toward a detonator. The clerk swallowed hard and pulled the device closer. His fingers shook. He didn't know why he felt nervous. He didn't know why his chest felt tight. He didn't know why a child's quiet request, "Can I put my hand?" felt like it carried the weight of an entire world. He only knew one thing. This wasn't normal. The millionaire leaned forward. Eyebrows raised, lips curled in amusement that was slowly, painfully dying. "Oh, this I've got to see," he muttered, but his voice lacked its earlier swagger. More like a gambler laughing too hard at a game. He's finally realizing he's losing. "Go on, sweetheart," another executive said with a smirk. "Let's see what magic trick you have." But the girl didn't look at him, or at anyone. She only looked at the scanner, a small black rectangle, glowing faint blue, humming softly, waiting. Her hand trembled as she lifted it, not from fear, not from uncertainty, from exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that comes from being ignored too many times. Dismissed too many times, forgotten too many times. She pressed her palm against the sensor. The device beeped, a sound so tiny, so precise, yet somehow so powerful, it made 3 adults flinch. The scanner lit up, brilliant white, then a gold, then a deep, pulsing indigo no one in the room had ever seen. The millionaire's laugh died in his throat. "What? What is that?" he snapped. "Why isn't it red for error? Why is it doing that?" No one answered, because the scanner wasn't rejecting her. It wasn't timing out. It wasn't asking for a retry. It was scanning, authenticating, verifying. The girl kept her hands steady. Despite the trembling, her eyes glassy, her breathing thin, as if she'd been waiting her whole life for anyone to see her. For more than the dirt on her clothes, the scanner flashed one final time. A sharp, blinding pulse of silver lightning. Then the terminal screen began to change. Numbers shifting. Lines loading. Access expanding. Whatever was on that monitor was opening for her, and only her. A low electronic hum rolled through the terminal, a deeper, heavier sound than anything that had played in that lobby before. The screen flickered once, twice, and then lines of encrypted data began to cascade downward, like falling code, not numbers, not a simple balance, not the usual client dashboard. This was something different, something none of them had access to. The junior banker leaned forward, squinting. "What? What system is that?" he whispered. No one answered, because no one knew. The millionaire stood abruptly, chair scraping across the marble with a harsh screech. "What are you doing?" he barked at the clerk. "This isn't a joke anymore. Shut it down." "That's not a standard interface. I can't shut it down," the clerk whispered. He clicked, but the cursor wouldn't move. He tried to exit. Nothing happened. He clicked again, harder this time, but the screen kept shifting on its own. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was processing. The manager stepped closer, irritation fading into unease. "Why is it showing restricted tiers?" That's not available from a client request." The clerk swallowed. "It's bypassing our user-level access," he whispered. "Not sure the system cares who's touching it right now." Cold edge sliced into the millionaire's voice. "That's impossible." But the girl, the small, trembling girl whose feet barely made a sound on the polished floor, was watching the screen with quiet intensity, as though she had finally reached a place she'd been walking toward for a very long time. A woman in a pearl necklace gasped quietly. "Why is it asking for global validation?" Another voice whispered, "I've only seen that in training modules. And they said that level was reserved for." He stopped himself, because the device beeped again. A second authentication. Successful, the screen flashed. Shifting into a new layout, cleaner, brighter, sharper, with symbols and seals most people in the room had never seen in person. The millionaire's mouth fell open. Just slightly. Just enough for his confidence to slip. What on earth is this?" The clerk's voice cracked. "I don't know." Then, eyes shaking, he whispered, "But this isn't a normal account." The room grew colder. The marble felt harder. Every heartbeat felt louder because whatever the system was opening wasn't meant for ordinary people to see. The lobby, once loud with confidence and caffeine-fueled ambition, felt like a cathedral, a grand, echoing chamber where even breaths seemed sacrilegious. The screen wasn't just glowing now. It was alive, processing, unlocking, revealing layers that should have required entire teams of cybersecurity officers. Not the tiny hand of a child who had walked in with nothing but hope and a wrinkled paper. A senior analyst's gray suit. Rigid posture stepped closer, squinting at the screen. "This isn't our proprietary interface," he murmured. The manager's jaw tightened. "What do you mean? Is this a breach? A hack?" His voice trembled not with anger, but with something rarer in men who lived on power: fear. The analyst shook his head. Slowly, no. A breach would trigger alarms. This is the system allowing access." That sentence dropped like a stone into water. A silent ripple of disbelief spread. The millionaire's mask of arrogance began to crack. "Further, that doesn't make sense," he snapped. "That level, those seals, those are government-adjacent classifications. A child can't." "She can't." He stopped, because the girl looked up at him, not with spite, not with tears, not with fear, just a soft, quiet expression of someone who was used to adults doubting her existence, someone who'd lived through worse than their words. Her eyes flickered back to the screen as the system beeped again. Another window opened. A deeper tier, a quieter layer. Lined with golden icons blinking slowly like patient heartbeats, a woman near the counter whispered nervously, "I've worked here 12 years, and I've never seen an interface that color." The clerk exhaled a shaky breath. "This isn't client-level data," he said. "This looks like auditing access." The millionaire's head snapped toward him. "Auditing for what? For who?" The clerk's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "For someone far above our clearance." The banker beside him took a small step back, not because of the girl, but because of the realization dawning like a cold sunrise. Whatever they were looking at wasn't meant for them, and yet kept opening and opening and opening, as if layers of secrets buried under digital stone were finally being unearthed. All for a child with bare feet and tired eyes. A soft chime echoed from the terminal, a sound so delicate, so deceptively gentle, it made the hair on the back of every neck rise. The interface shifted again, not downward this time, but inward, as if the system were peeling back layers of its own guarded architecture. The millionaire stepped back instinctively. Just one step, barely noticeable, but enough for the closest executives to see the flicker of unease in his eyes. "What? What did it open now?" he demanded, voice sharpening out of fear he couldn't mask. Before the clerk could answer, a new symbol blinked onto the screen, a silver crest, circular, unfamiliar to every employee in that lobby. The junior banker's voice cracked. "Sir, that crest? It's not banking." The manager frowned. "Then what is it?" No one knew, except the girl, for the first time since walking in. Her face softened, not in joy, not in surprise, but in recognition, like she had seen that crest before, like it meant something to her. Something deep, something painful. She stepped closer to the counter, her reflection trembling in the glowing screen. The clerk noticed the movement and swallowed hard. It's requesting a secondary confirmation," he whispered. "Secondary?" The analyst repeated. "We just did biometrics. That should have been enough. It's something else." The clerk's eyes moved anxiously along the line of text. "It's asking for a verbal identifier." The millionaire scoffed, but there was no laughter behind it now. Just dread pretending to be confidence. "A verbal identifier. For her?" He waved a hand dismissively. "This is nonsense. Shut it off." "Can't shut it off." The clerk's voice cracked loud enough to echo across the marble floor. Silence dropped like a hammer. A guard stepped forward. Lowering his voice, What happens if she doesn't give it? The analyst inhaled sharply. These systems, when they request secondary access, it usually means the data behind it is sensitive. The millionaire rolled his shoulders back, as though trying to stitch his pride back together. This is ridiculous. She probably knows a password someone told her. She's a child. He didn't believe his own words. Everyone could hear it. The girl looked up, eyes wet, lips shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of a memory that hurt to touch. She opened her mouth, and the entire lobby braced, not knowing that her next 4 words would begin the downfall of everyone who ever underestimated her. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Just a thin breath, shaky and uncertain, like her voice had been locked away for far too long. The clerk leaned forward gently. "It's okay," he whispered. Even though nothing in this moment was okay, the millionaire crossed his arms, masking panic with arrogance. "Go on then," he taunted. "Say your magic words." But the girl didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him, didn't even seem to hear him. Her eyes had drifted somewhere else, far beyond the marble lobby, far beyond the cold glass windows, far beyond this world built for people who never tasted struggle. A ripple flashback flickered in her mind, bare hands gripping a chair too tall for her. A stern voice telling her, "Repeat after me." Shadowy office, with a man whose face she remembers only in pieces. A bracelet glowing faintly as a scanner beeped. And her own small voice, trembling, whispering something she never truly understood. She blinked, the memory dissolving like smoke, then with a breath that sounded like the first inhale after drowning. She said the words, 4 words, soft, fragile, yet carved with something ancient. "I'm here to verify." The system responded instantly. The screen's glow intensified, from white to gold to a deep indigo pulse that swallowed the entire interface. A collective gasp spread across the lobby. The analyst stumbled back. The manager cursed under his breath. One of the guards reached for the radio on his shoulder. "What does she say?" he whispered, voice cracking. The clerk exhaled shakily. That phrase. "It's not for clients. It's not for staff. It's protocol." "What protocol?" the millionaire demanded. His voice was sharp, but his eyes for the first time held fear. The clerk couldn't answer. He simply stared as the system shifted again, opening into a tier no one there had ever seen, not even in training. The girl lowered her hand from the scanner, her shoulders trembling. But she didn't cry. Not yet, because the system was listening now. Listening to her, and no one in that marble palace of wealth had any idea what was coming next. The terminal emitted a soft, resonant tone, not the sharp electronic beeps the staff were used to, but a deeper, fuller note. Almost respectful. Almost like the machine itself had become aware of who it was responding to. The screen shifted again, columns realigning, codes rearranging themselves like soldiers forming ranks. Gold-lined borders folded open, as though making space for something or someone. "Significant," the junior banker whispered. It recognized her phrase. The manager shook his head. "That's impossible. That phrase belongs to," he stopped. As if finishing the sentence out loud would shatter the world he trusted. The millionaire stepped closer, forcing false confidence into his voice. "Explain this," he barked at the clerk. "Explain why a little girl from the street can walk in here and gain access that even we don't have." The clerk didn't blink. He was pale, sweating and clinging to the last shreds of the reality he thought he lived in. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know what she unlocked. I don't know why the system is responding to her." He wiped his forehead. "But this interface, it's not for banking transactions. This is deeper." A ripple flashback flickered in the child's mind, the sound of an elevator descending, a woman's trembling hands braiding her hair. Someone saying, "If anything ever happens, you'll know what to do." And a door closing before she understood why. Her breath hitched. The analyst, staring at the new symbols appearing on the screen, muttered, "This is internal, not local, not national." His voice cracked. "Oh God, It's pulling remote access keys. The millionaire's facade finally slipped. Just a fraction, but enough to show the fear rising through the cracks. Remote. Access to what? He demanded. The analyst didn't answer because he didn't know, but the system did. And it was still opening, layer after layer, like a vault revealing secrets buried under digital stone. A final prompt appeared. Simple, small, but carrying a weight that made several people inhale sharply. Identity confirmed. Proceed to authorized overview? The clerk looked at the girl with a fear he couldn't explain. Do you want me to open it? He whispered. The girl didn't move. She only blinked once, slowly, and nodded. And somewhere behind that nod, a quiet storm began to rise. The clerk's finger hovered over the mouse, a tiny motion, yet somehow heavier than every signature he'd ever approved in his entire career. He hesitated. Not because of procedure. Not because of protocol, because something deep in his instincts whispered that crossing this line would change everything for him. For the girl, for everyone in that marble sanctuary of money and ego. But the girl, the barefoot child who seemed carved from exhaustion and hope, had nodded. So he clicked. A soft chime followed. Gentle, cold, final. The screen shifted. And for a split second, the entire lobby reflected in its surface dozens of suited figures staring back at themselves, as if the machine were reminding them that before they learned to count money, they were human. Then the first line loaded. The analyst squinted. What is that formatting? It's not financial. The manager stepped closer, pulse jumping in his throat. It's hierarchical, tiered access ranking. This looks like a designation log. The millionaire pushed past them, his expensive cologne cutting through the air like arrogance. Designation? For who? For her? Don't be ridiculous. But as he stepped forward, the screen updated again, and the next section appeared. Not names, not account numbers, not currencies, just titles, rows of them, written in a format none of them recognized. And at the very top, a blinking gold marker hovered like a silent warning. The clerk's eyes widened. Can't be right. The analyst's voice cracked. This isn't a banking document. This is a clearance matrix. A what? The millionaire snapped. A list, the analyst whispered, of who outranks who. A ripple of panic spread through the staff. One woman stepped back. Another covered her mouth. The guards exchanged glances. Because this wasn't wealth. This wasn't power in the way millionaires understood it. This was something beyond them, something they were never meant to witness. Something reserved for people who made decisions that impacted nations, systems, entire infrastructures. And yet here it was, opening for a child who lived in clothes to warn to remember color. The millionaire's breath hitched. What category is she in? The clerk didn't answer, because the screen hadn't finished loading yet, and the next update would shatter the last pieces of certainty left in that room. Lines of encrypted notation streamed down the screen, symbols that didn't match any banking structure. Any financial tier, any classification used in the world of ordinary wealth. These weren't numbers tied to money. These were identifiers tied to authority. The analyst stepped forward, breath shallow. That top row, I've only seen that symbol in simulations. It's theoretical, not real. The manager shook his head hard. They told us those levels didn't exist. They said they were placeholders, tests for system stress, not actual data. But the blinking gold marker stayed where it was, glowing softly, beating like a second heart inside the machine. The millionaire's voice broke through the tension like a blade. Explain it. What does that rank mean? What category is she in? Nobody answered. The girl lowered her gaze, her fingers curling into the hem of her shirt, a tiny motion, but filled with a weight no child should ever carry. A ripple flashback burned behind her eyes, hands carrying her in the dead of night. Someone whispering she can't stay here, it's too dangerous. A tall figure pacing a dim hallway, framed by screens of data she didn't understand. And the last words she remembered before the door slammed shut. If things go wrong, they'll find her. She blinked, pulling herself back to the marble floor beneath her bare feet. The clerk's voice finally cracked. It's showing her classification, her placement, her access tier. The junior banker whispered, but those categories aren't for people like us. Therefore, people who work with global systems. Global systems? The millionaire scoffed, though his voice shook. She's a child. Another line loaded, then another. And another. The golden marker pulsed twice, 3 times. As if the system were preparing itself for a truth it hadn't delivered in years, the clerk stepped back, his chair rolling away softly as though even it wanted distance. I don't think she's in a category meant for civilians, he whispered. The millionaire's head snapped toward him. What category, then? The clerk swallowed hard. We're not high enough to even read it. And before anyone could breathe, the final classification line began to appear. The final line loaded slowly, not appearing all at once, materializing letter by letter, as if the system itself hesitated to expose what had been dormant, hidden, touched for years. The millionaire leaned in, trying to mask fear with aggression. Well, read it, he snapped. Tell us what rank she supposedly has. But the clerk didn't speak. He couldn't. His eyes were locked on the screen, widening with each glowing character that formed. The analyst pressed a hand to his chest, as though steadying a heart that wasn't beating right. This doesn't make sense, he murmured. It's higher than Tier 1, higher than global clearance, higher than the emergency override level. The manager stepped closer, but the moment he saw the partially formed symbol, he stopped, as if an invisible wall had slammed into him. That can't be real. His voice broke. That category was discontinued, locked, destroyed. The millionaire scoffed, but it didn't land. It sounded brittle, like breaking glass. What category? He demanded, a sharp edge of panic invading his tone. Nobody answered, not because they didn't want to, but because every person in that lobby was staring at a blinking sequence reserved for people whose decisions shaped nations, security networks, infrastructure integrity, and the digital arteries of entire economies. A category above presidents, above directors, above every clearance code they knew existed. The girl watched silently, her small chest rising and falling with the shallow breaths of someone who had spent too long being unseen. Another ripple flashback. Hit her fingers brushing her cheek, a woman whispering, "Promise me you'll never say your name out loud. Not until someone asks you to show your balance." And a sliding door closing behind tears she didn't understand. She swallowed hard. The clerk's voice finally emerged, fragile, trembling, barely more than a breath. This isn't a balance inquiry, he whispered. The millionaire stiffened. Ain't. What do you mean? The clerk stared at the symbol, the final character still blinking as it prepared to reveal the truth. This screen, this level, this designation, he inhaled sharply. It only appears for one type of account. The lobby froze. Every person held their breath, because the next second, the blinking gold marker finally stopped, and the classification line locked into place. The gold line glowed, steady now, no longer blinking, no longer hesitating. The final classification stood fully formed on the screen, and every person in that lobby, every guard, every banker, every executive in polished shoes and expensive arrogance, saw it. But none of them understood it, not at first, because it wasn't a number, it wasn't a name, it wasn't a rank in any language they recognized. It was a symbol, a forbidden one, a retired one. A level so high it was supposed to exist only in training files and whispered rumors, a designation whispered about people who controlled systems behind systems, networks behind networks, codes behind the safety of entire nations. A category that was supposedly disbanded after the world realized only a handful of humans were ever entrusted with that level of oversight. Tiered above global security, above financial regulators, above digital directors, above the untouchable elite. A title so rare, it hadn't appeared in over a decade. The millionaire choked on his own breath. What does that symbol mean? The analyst shook his head, voice trembling like a man standing on the edge of a storm. I've only seen it once, he whispered. In an orientation document. Years ago, before they removed that page. The manager stepped forward, his eyes glued to the golden crest. That symbol. He swallowed loudly. It's not a clearance tier. Silence strangled the room. The girl's small fingers tightened against her shirt. Her eyes fell to the floor, not in fear, but in the way someone lowers their head when the truth burdens them more than the world ever could. The clerk whispered, "It's legacy designation." The millionaire blinked. "A what?" The analyst stepped back, as though distance alone could protect him. "A legacy," he murmured, "assigned only to two people born into certain lines. People tied to systems older than our infrastructure. People with pre-authorized global access." The millionaire shook his head violently. "That's impossible. She's a child." The analyst's voice broke. So were the last ones, when they were chosen. The girl lifted her head, eyes shimmering not with innocence, but with knowledge she should have never needed to carry. And before the next breath fell, the system requested the final confirmation. "Display inherited access history?" The room gasped, because this was no longer about money. No longer about balance. This was about lineage, inherited power, and the truth. Was seconds away? The prompt blinked on the screen, display inherited access history, each letter glowing like a warning carved in gold. No one moved. Not the guards. Not the millionaire. Not even the clerk. Because this was the line you never crossed. The line reserved for people whose names were spoken in boardrooms the public didn't know existed. People who shaped frameworks, not accounts. People whose access wasn't earned, but born. The millionaire's voice shook. Really shook this time as he tried to reclaim control. "Don't open it," he snapped. "Whatever this glitch, this error, don't you dare open it." The system didn't wait for him. The cursor flashed twice. A soft chime echoed across the marble floor, and the page began loading anyway. The clerk stumbled back. I didn't click anything." A shiver crawled across the room. The screen dimmed, then brightened, showing a circular archive, marked with a crest that none of them recognized except the girl. She flinched, a tiny motion, barely visible, but heavy enough to crack the thin emotional shell around her. A ripple flashback hit her, not fragmented this time, but sharp and whole, a tall figure kneeling beside her. Hands steady, voice trembling. "If anything happens, this system will look for you. Not for me. Not for her. For you. Because you're the only one left." She had been too young to understand. Too young to know the weight being forced onto her small shoulders. Too young to realize that sometimes inheritance is not a gift, but a warning. Back in the lobby, the archive lines appeared slowly, each one colder than the last. A woman in a pearl necklace clasped her hands together. These are names," she whispered, voice breaking. The millionaire stepped forward. "No, they can't be." But they were. The names belonged to a lineage that operated far above the world these bankers thought they dominated. Names tied to classified networks, sovereign systems, digital skeletons of nations, names every employee in the room wasn't clear to see, except the screen wasn't showing the names in full. It was showing one. Single, golden line. The girl's hand trembled, because the name belonged to the person she had spent her entire life missing. Someone the world thought was gone. Someone whose legacy now pulsed through the screen and through her. The golden line expanded slowly at first, as if the system itself understood that this truth was not meant to be rushed. Then, with a soft, resonant chime, the archive unfurled like a digital scroll, revealing the name the entire lobby wasn't authorized to even glimpse. A name the child knew, not from documents, not from history, but from memory, from lullabies whispered in the dark, from stories told during nights of fear, from the heartbeats she used to fall asleep against. A woman behind the counter gasped, hand flying to her mouth. The manager staggered backward. The analyst whispered, almost reverently, "That's impossible. She's not supposed to have a successor." The millionaire's face drained of color. "What? What name is that?" he demanded. "What are you people talking about?" But no one answered him. All eyes were fixed on the screen, on the crest, on the title. On the golden identifier reserved for an individual whose decisions shaped international infrastructures, security matrices, digital governance, and systems the public had no knowledge of. A person known only by a codename. A legend in the world of classified networks. A ghost in the realm of systems. Oversight the architect. The little girl flinched, because that was the name people whispered about her mother, and they didn't think she could hear. Ripple flashbacks surged inside her, her mother's tired eyes. The coded bracelets she wore. The nights she sat in front of glowing screens. The calls she received, always urgent, always secret. The final night. The banging on the door. Her mother's trembling hands pushing her into a stranger's arms. Run. Don't look back. If they ever find you, show them the paper. They'll know. Tears brimmed in her eyes. Across the lobby, the clerk whispered, "This girl, she's not here to ask about money." The millionaire swallowed hard. Then what is she here for? The terminal answered for her. A line appeared across the screen. Primary successor, located architect lineage, confirmed. The room erupted, gasps, chairs scraping. Hands trembling, the barefoot little girl in worn clothes wasn't poor. Wasn't lost. Wasn't mistaken. She was the direct inheritor of one of the rarest classifications in existence. A legacy the entire lobby had mocked, doubted, dismissed until now. The words on the screen glowed brighter. Primary successor located architect lineage, confirmed. A declaration so absolute it seemed to vibrate through the marble floor, through the glass walls, through the very air itself. The reactions were instant. The woman in pearls backed away, her knees trembling. The manager lowered his tablet, shoulders collapsing under the weight of a truth he was never meant to witness. One guard instinctively straightened his posture, as if standing before someone far above his pay grade, rank, and world. The millionaire who had mocked, laughed, and dismissed the little girl as nothing more than an inconvenience, took a small, stumbling step backward. "No," he whispered, that can't be true. She's just a kid, a nobody, a child from the street." The analyst shook his head, voice barely holding together. "Sir, legacy designations aren't assigned by wealth, or status, or appearance." His jaw tightened. "They're inherited through blood." The girl's breath hitched. Not from pride, not from triumph, but from the sudden, crushing weight of realizing that her mother's whispered warnings, her sudden disappearance, the fear in the eyes of those who hit her, all of it was connected to this moment. The clerk turned toward the girl, eyes softening in a way that cut deeper than sympathy. It looked like respect, genuine, terrified respect. He knelt, slowly, carefully, as if approaching royalty. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. His voice cracked like something inside him had broken. We should have never treated you that way," the millionaire snapped, desperate. "That's not possible. She's nothing. She doesn't belong here." But his voice betrayed him, shaking, unsteady, quivering like a man seeing the edge of a cliff, didn't know he'd been walking toward. The analyst stared at him with disbelief. "You just humiliated." "The successor of the architect," gasps, whispers, a distant thud as someone dropped their coffee. The girl squeezed the crumpled paper in her hand. The last thing her mother gave her. The only proof she had left? Her eyes lifted, glassy but steady. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't revel in their fear. She simply said, voice trembling, "I told you. I just wanted to see my balance." And for the first time, the millionaire realized, he wasn't standing above her, he was trembling beneath her. The lobby was silent, not the busy silence of a banking hall, not the casual hush of professionals at work, but the heavy, reverent quiet of a courtroom right before judgment is delivered. The girl stood still, small shoulders rising and falling, hands trembling only slightly as she looked up at the clerk who had mocked her minutes ago, and now knelt before her as though she were a sovereign he had wronged. The millionaire swallowed hard and dry, painful swallow that cracked through the room like a confession he didn't want to give. His arrogance had vanished. His smirk had dissolved. His voice, once sharp, cruel, dominating, was now trapped in his throat like a stone. He couldn't spit out and couldn't swallow down. The clerk looked up at the little girl, eyes filled with a kind of awe no child should ever be responsible for earning. "I can pull up your balance now," he whispered. If you want me to?" Her breath hitched. She nodded, slow, quiet, scared in the way only children carrying entire worlds inside them can be. He turned back to the terminal, hands trembling as he navigated the final confirmation. The system didn't ask for permission this time. It simply obeyed the presence it had recognized. A soft chime echoed, then another, then the final one, a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in the marble beneath their feet. The screen shifted once more, and then the balance appeared. But no one gasped. No one screamed. No one fainted, because the number on the screen didn't look like money at all. It wasn't a bank balance. It wasn't a financial statement. It wasn't a transaction history. It was a ledger, a global access ledger, a list of every system she now inherited oversight of, from financial infrastructures to digital security networks to classified stability matrices that safeguarded entire regions. It wasn't wealth. It was power. Terrifying. Unimaginable. Inherited power that could tilt systems the way wind tilts leaves. The clerk exhaled shakily. "That's not a balance," he whispered. "That's an authority report. Report only one lineage had ever been allowed to receive." The girl stared at it, not understanding its complexity, but understanding its weight. The memory of her mother's voice echoed through her. "If they ever ask, if they ever doubt you, show them your balance. It will protect you when I no longer can." A tear slipped down her cheek. The millionaire finally found his voice, thin, hoarse, trembling. Wait. I didn't know. I didn't. I thought she was. I didn't mean." He didn't finish the sentence, because everyone in the lobby saw through him. His cruelty, his arrogance, his laughter at a child before knowing a single thing about her. The guard beside him lowered his gaze. The junior banker shook his head, ashamed. The woman in pearls took a step away from him as though his presence alone was something toxic. The millionaire reached toward the girl, voice cracking. I'm sorry." The words sounded foreign in his mouth, like they'd never been spoken before. But the girl didn't look at him. Her tears glimmered in the sterile light. But she wasn't crying from fear now. She was crying because the world had finally seen her for who she was, not for the dirt on her shirt, not for the bruises on her childhood, not for the silence life forced on her. The clerk stood slowly, not rising above her, but lifting himself so he could bow his head properly. He placed a hand over his heart. "You have my deepest apologies," he whispered. "I treated you less than human, less than worthy, but you belong to a legacy greater than any of us." A hush fell again, a reverent one. A guard, the same one who threatened to remove her, took off his hat and lowered it respectfully. The analyst lowered his gaze. The manager sniffed, trying to hide the tremble in his jaw. Even the marble cold air felt warmer. The girl wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. She didn't speak, didn't demand, didn't punish. Children rarely seek vengeance. They only seek understanding. She turned toward the revolving doors. Clutching the crumpled paper that had changed everything, the clerk called out gently, "Do you need help? Do you want escort protection?" The girl shook her head. "No," she whispered. "My mama said, once they see it, I'm safe." And for the first time in that towering hall of power, wealth, and pride, she walked like someone who finally had a place in the world. Not because she wanted power, not because she understood legacy, but because the truth was out. The millionaire slumped into a chair, broken, lost, crushed under the weight of his own shame. The clerk watched her leave, voice soft as a prayer. Remember this day. She wasn't asking for money. She was asking to be seen. The doors closed behind her with a soft whoosh, carrying her into the sunlight that waited like hope on the other side. She disappeared into the bright morning, bare feet patting on warm stone, carrying a legacy the world had tried to bury. But not today. Today, the world had bowed. Today, a little girl taught giants that true worth is never measured by the clothes on your back or the dust on your feet, but by the courage to walk into rooms that were never built for you and claim what was always yours.